Hello, hi, this is Aditya and welcome to Shankar Tech channel. In my previous video, I've introduced you to the functionality of the article list component, and I've also explained why and how we need to create the component dialog box and also Sling models. In this video, we are going to see and understand what is the resource resolver, what is a resource, and we are also going to see how we can use the query builder API to actually build a query and query in the database and get the list of articles. This video is part of the AEM tutorials for beginners playlist, the link for which I'll give it out in the description box. Please check it out if you are interested. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Let's get started with the presentation. So this is the component which we were trying to understand in our previous video. Okay, so we thought like this is the cards component, article list component, wherein each article will be displayed as a card. Okay, and this rice plantation and the description and this family picnic and description and flower garden and description are coming from the page properties. So that is what we have discussed. So this is our site structure. So if I just go into EN and articles, so this is where my articles are there. Okay, and in this, if I go into the page properties, so I will have the title and the description mentioned there. So this is the title and this is the description. So I need to access these field values and then I need to render it like this. Okay, so for that what we have discussed is this logic. Okay, so first we need to get the root path. Okay, so this root path we are getting as part of the dialog box. So if I just go into this article list component, so if I just open this article root path, so this is where we have given the ability for the authors to pick the articles root path. Okay, this is where you can pick the root path. And then the second step which we thought is we need to get the list of all the articles under this root path. Like if I just go into this root path which is articles, I have these three of them, right? So somehow I need to query the database and get the list of all these three articles. So that is the second step which we thought we need to do. And the third step which we need to take is we need to get the properties of each articles. Okay, so we got the list of the articles, then I need to go into each and every article and open the properties and see what is the title and what is the description, and I need to prepare a list of all the titles and description for each of these articles. Then as a final step we will have to pass it on to our UI and then render this component. Okay, and that rendering has to be done as like this. Okay, so these are the 4 steps which you need to do. That is what we have discussed as part of our previous video. Okay, so this part we have completed already, how to get the root path. So we have created the component and we have created a Sling model, and from which we are getting this article path. So if you haven't watched this already, I'll give out the previous videos link in my description box. Please watch it out and then come up onto this video. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to query the list of the articles under a particular root path. So for that we thought we'll use the query builder, right? We will use the query builder API. Okay, so actually AEM has given a nice UI for us to actually use the query builder API and see what query we need to exactly run to get the details which we need. Okay, so I'll show you that query builder API now. So this is the path under which the query builder API UI is there. This is AEM inbuilt. Okay, I'll give this path in the description box also. So you can directly go into this path and you can open this query builder API UI. Okay, from this path you can give the query syntax here, and then it will execute the query and give you the result. Okay, so we have this documentation here as to how exactly we need to use the query builder API, what is the syntax of the queries, and all that is mentioned here. Okay, so I will give this link also in the description box for you, so you can refer this syntax. So here if you see, you have all the different ways of using this syntax. Okay, so you can refer to this URL. Okay, so let's say what we need to do now is we need to see what all records or what all data is there as part of a particular path, right? And what is that path? That path is this path, which is our articles path. So this is our root path in which all the articles are there, right? So we need to see what all records or what all nodes are there as part of this particular path. Okay, so when I say node, what I'm referring to is this one. Okay, what all nodes are there as part of this root path? That is what we wanted to query. Okay, and then the syntax to query that is, so we just need to copy this syntax here and paste it here. Okay, and then what is the root path for us? It is /content, and we have something else also, right? So let's open this. Okay, so this is our root path. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just go here and give this path, right? So now if I click on this search, we'll get all the list of the records which are there as part of this path. Okay, so now if we see what are all there as part of this article's root path. So if you see here, we got the articles Flower Garden, then we also got articles Flower Garden / JCR content, and so on and so forth, right? Under the JCR content, what all is there also, we got it. So we not only got until the Flower Garden, but we also got what is there under the Flower Garden also. So if you see here, so this is the Flower Garden, right? So this record we got it, but what is there under this JCR content, and what is there under this root and image? So all these child records also we are getting, right? So that is what we are getting when we query just upon the path. Okay, so now we get more records, but it is only displaying a few of them here. So it has a limit as to what it has to display. So it is displaying only few records here. Okay, so but what do we need? Okay, so that is what we need to see now. Okay, what we need actually is when we go into this Flower Garden and we go into this JCR content, right? So what we have here is here we have the description stored, right? So this is the article page, and inside that we have the JCR content, and here we have the description, and then we also have the title. So these two we need to access actually. And to be able to access this information, what we need is first this parent path. Okay, what is this parent? That is what list of all these children inside this, the parent ones path we need to get it first. So when I get the parent path, then I can see what is the content inside it. Okay, so first my target is to get the parent path. Okay, so how do I filter and say give me only parents, not what is inside that? Okay, so how do I say that? Okay, so if you see here, if I select any of the parent, right, I have the primary type here, and the primary type mentioned is CQ page, right? So this is what is the primary type. So what if I can query on this primary type as CQ page, and then I will get only this parent paths, right? So if I just go into this JCR content, and if I just go into the primary path, here it is CQ page content, right? The primary type here is CQ page content. So if I don't want these children, and if I want only these parents, so if I query upon the primary type as CQ page, then I will get only these records. Or else what I'll get this also, I'll get this also, and under this whatever is there also I will get if I just give the path. Okay, so that is what we are going to do now. So again we need to see the syntax as to how we need to query for a particular page, right? So if I see here, I have find all pages. So if I just go into this, so here is the syntax. So if I give type equal to CQ : page, then I can query only the nodes which are of the primary type CQ page. Okay, so if I just give search, then you see you get only 3 records, and it just exactly gave you what is the node which is of the type CQ page, right? So there are only 3 nodes, right? 3 nodes here which is of the type CQ page. So those 3 nodes are given here. Okay, so this is how we use the query builder UI. Okay, so now we know as to what is the syntax which we need to use, what is the exact query which we need to run to be able to get the content or the records which we need or the nodes which we need. Okay, so now we need to get into how exactly we need to query this from the code. okay, and how to access these records in the code. That is what we should know. But before understanding how we can use the Query Builder API, we need to understand what is a resource resolver and what is a resource. Okay, and but before understanding what is a resource and resource resolver, we need to understand one pattern, one design pattern, which is factory design pattern. If we understand that factory design pattern, then we'll be able to understand the rest of the things easily. So first, let's try to understand what is factory design pattern. So let us suppose we have a code like this. This is one Java class, this is another Java class, and this is another Java class. Okay, so this Java class is a MySQL Java class. So in this class, I will define how to connect to the database and how you can create a record, update a record, read a record, and delete a record. So all those code I will write as part of this MySQL database. Then from the class A, what I can just simply do is I can create a new instance of this MySQL database, and then I can just say db.connect, right? And then it will connect it to the database, MySQL database. So it will just execute this code and it will connect to it, right? So this is one type of writing the code. Okay, so now let us suppose my requirement is that I should be able to either connect it to MySQL database and run a query, or I should be able to connect to Oracle database and also run a query. So if that is my requirement, then what I need to do is I need to define one more class here, right? I need to say Oracle. It is because the way we need to connect to Oracle is different from the way we connect to MySQL. And also how to create the record, the syntax of that also might change, right? So I need to create a new class like this, and I need to define how to connect to it, create, update, read in the Oracle instance. And now if I want to change the database from MySQL database to Oracle database, the only way I can change it is I need to open each and every class and I need to change this thing. So I need to change the instantiation, right? Instead of instantiating the MySQL class, now I need to instantiate the Oracle class. Okay, and not just one class. So I need to do this change in all the classes wherever the reference for the MySQL is there. So it is a huge code change. Let us suppose if we have like 100 classes in which I am using the MySQL class, I need to open each and every class and I need to change the code for that, and then only it will work. Okay, so this is a huge change, right? So if I want to avoid this change, then the one way we can do is I can create a interface. I will say interface database, and then I will just define these methods here. So what is an interface? Interface is a way to define a particular data structure. So what I'm saying here is I am defining as to what is database. So what I'm saying here, there is a class called database, and what does it do? It can either connect, create, update, read, and delete. So all these things an interface database can do. Then here I'll come and I'll say implements. Okay, so I'll come here and I'll say MySQL implements database. Okay, and I'll come here and say Oracle also implements database. So what I'm saying actually is I'm saying MySQL is also a database and Oracle is also a database. These both are nothing but databases. Okay, so the structure of it is same. The methods or functions it can do is same, but how exactly it does differs. Okay, every database has a connect method and a create method and an update method, read method and delete method. Every database has that. But how do you connect to it? How do you create it? That differs. That code differs. So what I'll say is every database has these functions. First I'll define this as part of interface. Then I'll implement the database and I'll say how exactly you have to do this. So that definition part will differ from here to here. Okay, so that defining how it does will be done as part of this class. So then what I can do is I can simply say here, instead of calling this Oracle, I will say database DB, and I will say Oracle here. Okay, So now I am creating a Oracle class. I am creating an instance of the Oracle class and I am assigning it to the database, right? And I am saying db.connect. So I am able to do this. I am able to create an instance of this class, Oracle class, and I am able to assign it to the database class because Oracle class is a database. Okay, so I have defined it here saying that MySQL or Oracle is a database, which is Oracle implements database, right? Because it's of the both of the same type, I can create the Oracle class and I can assign it to the database. Okay, so this is the advantage I get by defining the interface and by implementing the interface. Okay, but just by doing this change, I haven't avoided anything. Like for example, if I have to change the database from Oracle database to MySQL database, I still have to go into each and every class and I just have to open this, right? And I'll say this MySQL. Okay, only this part remains constant, but I'll have to open each and every class and still say change Oracle instantiation to MySQL instantiation, right? So this change I have to still do. So now how can I avoid this change also? Okay, so to avoid that, what I'll do is I'll create something called as a factory class. Okay, I'll say public class database factory. Okay, and in this factory class, I will read from file. I will read a config file, and this config file or a property file will be like this. It will say mydb. Okay, so this is the property file or a config file. Okay, it has name and value, and it will say mydb. It can either say MySQL or it can say Oracle. Okay, so what I'll do is I will read this property file in this database factory, and I'll say if mydb equal to Oracle, then I'll create an instance of the Oracle class and I'll return it. Okay, I just will create a Oracle class instance, I'll return it. Okay, this is what I'll do. Okay, and else what I'll do is else if mydb equal to this mydb is coming from the property file. Okay, if mydb equal to MySQL, then what I'll do, I will just return the MySQL instance. Okay, here I'll say MySQL. Okay, so now I'm just creating the instance and I'm returning it. Okay, so this is what I have done. Then what I'll do is instead of instantiating the class here always, I will just call the database factory. So in all the classes I'll just say database factory. Okay, I'll just call this database factory. So then once I call this database factory, it will just read this config file and it will see what is the type of the database, and accordingly it will create the class. Okay, it will instantiate the class and that class will be returned here and that class will be passed on to the database instance. Okay, so now if you see, I need not open each and every class and change the code if the database changes, right? All I need to do is I just will change the property file. I'll just say this is MySQL. That's it. Then automatically the entire code which I have written will adapt it to the MySQL. Okay, so this is the advantage of having the factory instance or factory class. Okay, so hope I was able to explain clearly what is the factory pattern. So this is called as the factory design pattern. Okay, so now let's try to understand what is a resource resolver. So this is what will happen whenever we start our AEM instance. Okay, so AEM is started up. So then what happens is immediately it will start the resource resolver factory. So now we know what is a factory instance, right? So what is a factory instance? In our example, we have multiple databases, right? So it can connect to the Oracle database or MySQL database. So we created a factory instance or a factory class which can return the proper database instance, which will instantiate the proper database instance. So this factory instance also will do the same thing. So what it does is there could be multiple resource resolvers. Now what is the job of this resource resolver? The job of this resource resolver is to connect to the database. So AEM has the capability not only to connect to JCR, it can connect to multiple databases. Okay, it can connect to JCR, that's fine, but it can also connect to multiple databases. So each connection, each thing or each class which connects to one database is called as a resource resolver. Okay, so there'll be one resource resolver, for example, which connects to JCR. There could also be a resource resolver which can connect to some Oracle. We don't know, like there could be multiple resource resolvers. But what is the resource resolver which we are currently using? That instance will be created by this resource resolver factory. So just as we are creating here, right, what is the right instance? We have read through the properties and we identified which database instance we have to create, and accordingly we created the database instance here, right? Similarly, this resource resolver fact also knows as to which property it has to read, which property file it has to read, and accordingly which resource resolver it has to instantiate. That job is done by the resource resolver factory. Okay, so once this resource resolver factory is triggered, it will read that config file, it will see which resource resolver it has to create, and it will create a proper resource resolver which can connect to the relevant database. Okay, so 99% the AEM instance will connect to JCR. Okay, so it will instantiate the resource resolver which can connect to the JCR database. Okay, JCR is nothing but a database, right? It is almost equivalent to database. Okay, so this resource resolver has the capability to connect to the database. So just as we are seeing here, right, a database can connect, create, update, read, delete. All these operations resource resolver also can do. Okay, so the way in which it connects to the JCR, right, it creates something called as a JCR session. Okay, it establishes a session with the database. Okay, that is how we connect to anything, right? We should first establish a session. Means we should authenticate. We need to pass the user ID password, and there might be a URL which we need to hit, and we should establish the connection, right? So that connection is stored as part of a session. Okay, so all this is happening when we are starting up the AEM instance. Okay, so now let's try to understand what exactly we need to do to get this query builder. Okay, so now let's think like query builder. What is the job of this query builder? Right, the job of this query builder is to connect to database, run the query and get the result, right? As I told already, what is it doing all this? It is the resource resolver, right? As I told, resource resolver is just like this database, right? It can connect, create, update, read and delete, right? All this is done by resource resolver, right? So now we are talking about a query builder which can run the query, right? So this query builder job should be part of this resource resolver, right? Because to run a query, you have to connect to the database and you have to run the query, get the result, right? So all that is done by the resource resolver. So it just gives us a hint that this query builder class has something to do with the resource resolver, right? So in that way we can think and we can come up with a certain logic as to how exactly we have to get this query builder class. Okay, get the instance of this query builder class and how can we execute the query. So let's see the code for this and then we will understand more about it. So this is the code which we have written already. So now what we need to do here is we just need to add one more method and annotate it with the post construct annotation. Okay, so what is this post construct annotation? So what it does is, after injecting all these variables, like how this injection work, everything I have explained in my previous video, right? So after injecting all these variables, then the control will come to post construct. Okay, then it will execute whatever code is written here. So here we need to write the code, and that code is we somehow need to get this resource resolver. Okay, and why do we need to get this resource resolver? Because we know that once we get the resource resolver, we can somehow get this query builder. Okay, because query builder's job is part of this resource resolver. Somehow these two are related, right? Because it is connecting to the database and this is also connecting to the database. So we know that if we get the instance of resource resolver, then we can somehow get the query builder. Okay, so but how do we get this resource resolver? So the way we can get this resource resolver is by using this resource. Okay, so let's see the entire flow here. So first a user will hit a page, right? So let's suppose he is going on to this page and he is trying to load this particular page. Then immediately it goes into CRXDE and it will find for this page node, right? So that is the first thing the Sling will do. So it will go here and it will find for this node. So now that is done. Then it will open the JCR content and it will see what all components are there as part of this. So that is the second step, right? Then it will see this component and it will see what is the Sling resource type. Then it will know what is the code it has to execute, right? So it is going to this particular code. So it will just add /apps before. First it will search in the apps. So it will go into this and it will open this and it will see what is the file name which is starting with the same name. It will open this and now it came up to the code, right? It came up to this HTML code. So here you told that you need to use this model, right? So you said data slide use and you gave the path of what is the Java class which you want to use. So now the control comes to this Java class. So this is our Java class. So here it came so control came here and here you told adaptable resource, right? So now what is this resource? This resource is nothing but this component, right? So because the control all started here. So this is the resource object which you have injected here. So now using this resource object, you can get the resource resolver. Okay, so it is a two-way street. Okay, using the resource resolver, you can get to the resource. Like for example, if I say resource resolver dot resolve and if I give this path, then you will get this resource. Okay, now if you have this resource and if you say get me the resource resolver, then it will get you what is the resource resolver also. Why it is able to do it is because when you started the AEM, already resource resolver is there. Okay, so what is the resource resolver it is passing? Now you are upon a resource, right? Now the entire AEM instance is already started, it is running, and now you are upon a resource. It already injected. Now the Sling has injected one resource here. How is it able to do all this? How is it able to get this resource? It must have used some resource resolver, right? And only then it is able to get till the resource. So it has used, Sling has used some resource resolver and it has got up to this point, right? So now what it does is, now you came into the page, then you came into the component. From component code you came into the Sling model, and in the Sling model you have the reference of the current resource on which you are, right? All this current resource and everything it was able to get using the resource resolver. So using the current resource you can access the parent of it, right? So which resource resolver is responsible to get this resource, so that instance you can get it. Okay, so all this is part of the OSGA framework. Okay, so in OSGA framework all this will be like bundles. Okay, so this is one bundle which is the resource resolver bundle. Okay, so here is the resource resolver object. Okay, now here is your code, your model. Okay, your model is in this bundle. So now in this bundle you are asking about a resource. Now the OSGA framework will understand what is that resource and it will inject it. Okay, so now from here you have asked what is resource resolver. Now resource resolver is already instantiated when the AEM started, right? So that is part of this bundle. Already AEM started and already the resource resolver is instantiated, which is part of this OSGA framework, right? So now this OSGA framework, as soon as you call that resource resolver, you say get resource resolver, then this OSGA framework will inject that resource resolver instance which it has already instantiated during the startup of the AEM. So that is how you will be able to get the use the resource and get the resource resolver. So now what code we need to do here is we need to say resource resolver. This is how you need to write the code. Okay, So if I just import this class, okay, if I just import this class, now you will be able to get the resource resolver. But if you see here, what is this resource? Okay, it's not defined yet, right? So how do we get the resource? So here we have just adapted the resource. Here we got the instance of the resource, and we told this model is based upon a resource. What is this adaptable equal to resource class? It means that this model is nothing but a resource. Automatically when you say this model will automatically get adapted to this component, because this component is the resource, right? So this entire code, it is based upon this component. So that is what we are saying here. Okay, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to get this instance of this resource class, which is this component, into one variable which is resource. Now how can I do it? All I need to do is I just need to do a self here. I just need to use this self annotation, and I need to say resource. So now what is this self annotation? It is nothing but the self. What is this self? This model. What is this model? It is nothing but this resource. Okay, so I said this model is adaptable to this resource. So what is this adaptable pattern? I have already explained. Okay, so in my previous video, I'll give the link in the description box. Okay, you can refer to that if you don't understand what I'm talking about here. Okay, so as I told, this model is nothing but a resource. Okay, and this resource is nothing but this one. Okay, and I'm saying, since this model is nothing but this resource, I wanted to get whatever is self is nothing but this model. Okay, so that self, get it into this variable I'm saying. Okay, so now if you see, that error is gone. Okay, now I said resource dot get resource resolver. So now I already told how you are getting the resource resolver, because you call this get resource resolver. What will OSGI framework do? It already has the instance of that resource resolver. When you started up the AEM, it will just pass on that resource resolver instance here. So till here we got the resource resolver instance. So now what next? From this resource resolver instance, we need to get the query builder instance like this. Okay, so how do we know that this resource resolver can adapt to this query builder? Okay, as I told already, there is a relationship between this resource resolver and a query builder. Okay, so if you know what is this adapter pattern, you can very easily understand what I am talking about. So I would highly recommend you watch that video wherein I have discussed what is this adapter pattern and how it works, and then come back to this. Okay, so since these two are relatable, like resource resolver, and resource resolver is used to query upon the database, so I can just use this resource resolver and adapt it to the query builder. Okay, so adapted to is nothing but, to summarize it, I'm just saying, using this resource resolver, get me, just I used this resource and got this resource resolver, right? Similarly, I can just use this resource resolver dot get query builder. It is nothing but like that. Okay, resource resolver dot get query builder. Then you get the instance of this query builder. That's it. Okay, so now using this query builder, we actually need to build the query. So now let's see what is the code to build that query. Now this is the code I need to use to actually build the query. Okay, so if you see here, right, what I'm doing is I'm just doing the try catch here just to catch if there is any exception. Okay, so then I need to pass two things here. What is the session and what is the predicate? Okay, so now what is this predicate? This predicate is nothing but what is the query parameters which you need to use. If we see here, right, already we have seen what are the parameters which we need to use to exactly get these three records, right? So this is called as predicate. Okay, so now what is the syntax to define this? Okay, let's see that. Okay, so this is the syntax. So what I need to do is I need to create a map. Okay, so this is simple Java map which has the name and value, that mapping, you have it as part of this map object. So I just defined a variable which is of type map. Then what I'll do is I'll just pass the variable and value. So I'm just putting all this variable and value into this map. It is just an array or a list of the name and value. Okay, so the name is path and value is root path. Okay, and name is type and value is CQ page, just as you defined it here. Okay, path and this one, type and this one. So like that I am passing these parameters. So then what I am doing is I am saying predicate group dot create and then predicate, all this predicate map I am passing. Then this predicate group will create the query like this, and it will store it or send it to this create query method. So then apart from this, I need to pass the session also. Now what is this session? As I have already told, this resource resolver, to connect it to the JCR, it will create a session, right? It will use some user ID password to authenticate, and it will connect and it will create a session, I have already told, right? So this is the session which we need to pass as part of this builder, because using this session only it will create a query and it will connect to the database, right? So now how to get this session? Now again, this session is related to this resource resolver, right? Because this resource resolver only has connected to it has created the session and connected to the database, right? So these two are related. So using this you should be able to get this. So how do you get it? The syntax looks something like this. Okay, so all you need to do is use this resource resolver, okay, and adapt it to, which is nothing but resource resolver dot get session. Okay, we are just saying adapt to, but it is nothing but dot get session, and then it will automatically get that session, because when you started the AEM instance you already have the instantiated that session. So OSJ framework will just know, it already knows, OSJ framework already knows what is that session, so it will just pass that reference here. Okay, it will just pass that reference here. Now you have the session also. Now you need to just define this query. So I just said it is a query. So now if you see this, right, this query is part of comday CQ search. Okay, so this is all the imports which I have done. If you want to do it yourself, so these are all the imports I have done. You can just refer it from here. Okay, so now we need to import this logger also. Okay, so we need to define what is this logger. So I'll put down the syntax for this also. Okay, so this is how you define a logger. Okay, you just use the logger factory and get logger, and you pass the class. So this will create an instance of the logger. So using this instance I can just log anything. If there is any error I can just log it. Okay, I hope I was able to explain all the concepts till here very clearly. So what we'll do is we will use this query builder, query the JCR database and get the results. How exactly we need to do that and what is the syntax for that, we'll see in our upcoming videos. That's it for today. Thank you. If you are liking the videos which I am doing, please hit on that like button and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.